Joining me now from Beijing is Ragg. He is a master of wine and also co-founder of Dragon Phoenix Wine Consulting. Welcome to the show.
Good morning from Beijing.
Hi there. So red and white wine account for just about 5% of China's alcoholic consumption right now. How do you see the market growing?
Well, in terms of wine, it's a very interesting stage because, of course, there has been a slowing in the sort of market for wine, particularly in late 2019 and, of course, under COVID. But it is encouraging to see that there is a profound interest among many Chinese consumers in what wine is, what it can be, whether that's Chinese wine or imported wine. And because your piece is looking at the domestic side of things, I think it's a really fascinating moment right now, because domestic producers are indeed trying to court a new generation of wine consumers. And these are young people that perhaps already drink wine, but they still need persuading that they should try some Chinese wine. So I think that's a very interesting point that we've reached.
And what I actually want to ask you about the wine itself. How does China's New World wine stack up against your traditional producers, and what age does it have?
So it's a fascinating question. One of my other roles is to review Chinese wines for the Robert Parker Wine Advocate. So I get to taste an awful lot of Chinese wine and compare those wines with international examples. I think there's been a real improvement in the fine wine category, especially. I think initially when certain Chinese wineries wanted to produce premium wine, there was a tendency to copy France, particularly the model of Bordeaux Grand Cru Classé wine. And as there's now less interest amongst Chinese consumers amongst the classic wines of Bordeaux, some of these wineries have changed their approach. So sometimes that's making different styles of wine. Sometimes it's different grape varieties. Or you look at interesting projects like the French-Chinese project of Moet and Chandon in Ningxia. Now, that is a sparkling wine operation, and we know that sparkling is not a big part of this market. Nevertheless, they have produced sparkling wine products that they feel young Chinese consumers will enjoy. So that's one of the ways they've changed, through style, through grape variety, through making different kinds of wine.
Right, and what's popular right now?
Well, it depends who you're talking to and what sort of consumers. I'm fortunate to run training programs in many different Chinese cities. In terms of Chinese wine, I think for more progressive consumers, in other words, those who understand wine, they're interested in finding the wines that have better quality-price ratio. Because one of the troubles that Chinese wine has had is sometimes it's perceived to be too expensive. I'm talking here about the premium wines compared with some imported products. So I would say what's a bit more popular amongst advanced consumers are these more experimental wines, things like natural wine, orange wine, certain kinds of sparkling, wines made from non-traditional grape varieties. The wines that are just a little bit different from the normal kind of Ganhong dry red that is so common here.
Right. And Edward, does Chinese cuisine lend itself well to wines? And do these domestically produced ones pair better with Chinese cuisine, would you say?
I think it's a fascinating question. China has so many cuisines, and wine can go with any of those foods. I think we need to avoid a Western approach to being prescriptive sometimes about matching certain wines with certain dishes. Now, that's more common for eating culture in the West, where you don't usually have large groups of people. But it's very exciting, regardless of the Chinese cuisine you're eating, to sit around a table with 10 other people and maybe 3 or 4 different wines. And because of the way we eat in China, we're often trying different dishes at once, different wines at once. And I think it's that natural acidity in wine that lends itself so well to refreshing your palate. That's a big difference between beer and baijiu, which of course are traditionally paired with some cuisines or are drunk with Chinese food. But I would say wine has a special advantage there because there's so much diversity in wine and it's so refreshing. And it really depends on your individual palate, right? Your ge ren de kou wei. Because if you like wines that are a bit sweeter with food, that will suit you. If you like wines with more alcohol or more structure or more tannin, then you might like that with chuan cai or something, a robust cuisine like that. So I think there are endless possibilities really for matching Chinese wines with, and all wines, frankly, with Chinese cuisine. Some Chinese wines might have an advantage. It depends, though, on the kind of wine and the kind of cuisine, perhaps.
Right.